near Kiev. The attack targeted Vyshgorod, a town on the outskirts of the Ukrainian capital. Mykola Kalashnik, the regional governor, has confirmed the casualties. Firefighters were dousing flames and evacuating residents as well. The latest attacks follow a deadly missile and drone strike on the 29th of November, which killed 6 people and injured dozens across the capital region. Ukrainian officials are in Washington negotiating terms for a potential peace agreement, with talks also scheduled between President Zelensky and French President Macron in Paris on the anvil. With us on the broadcast this morning is Professor Veselin Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean of Jindal Global Law School. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've been tracking these strikes, the frequency of which has increased quite heavily. These have taken place. Yesterday we learned that 6 people were injured, had lost their lives. Dozens were injured. Today the death toll is at 1, but 11 have been wounded, including a child as well. We do know that a Ukrainian delegation is in the United States of America to iron out the final terms, but we don't know what exactly is included in that document. The original draft that had come out, that was in fact revealed by the Associated Press, that of course was being criticized for being very sympathetic to the Russian side and the Russian cause. Meanwhile, of course, Ukraine has its own priorities, the larger question being whether a NATO-style security guarantee can be implemented for Ukraine as well. The cap that was there on the size of the Ukrainian armed forces, whether that would be removed or not. In all of this, how do you assess the approach that the Trump administration has taken place? There are murmurs that, with the involvement of Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, it seems that the J.D. Vance club has a little more say in what's going on.
Well, it's difficult to assess because it's so hectic and erratic what the presidential administration does. They change their mind. They say one thing today, another thing tomorrow. One person goes into Moscow, another person meets Ukrainians in United States. There will be more meetings and more changes in the original plan. Effectively, it shows that very little can be delivered by this administration. Donald Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker, but these are illusions. He's absolutely no peacemaker. He talks about making peace, but he doesn't deliver anything. Russia doesn't want peace, and that's very clear, and only the Americans don't understand that. They continue believing that one morning they wake up and Putin changes his mind and accept a peace. That's impossible. Even if Putin signs a peace agreement tomorrow, that means nothing because Putin can change his mind and say, no, I didn't do that. So with such a liar and manipulator like Putin, whatever Trump is trying to do doesn't make absolutely no sense. There will be more rounds of negotiations. Russians are definitely trying to bribe Trump, and that's what basically that document of these 28 useless points was about. They offer Donald Trump some billions just to make him accept their terms. They push for Ukrainians to surrender Donbass, which will never happen. Russians are trying to get territory they cannot get with their military. And it's really a farce to watch. And I don't know whether it's a tragedy or a comedy, but yeah, tragic comedy. There was such a genre in the ancient Greece.
So you've chalked it down to Trump, of course, trying to project his image as a strong man, a deal maker, a peace broker as well, and the optics around it. But what's happening on the ground is that President Zelensky is also slated to meet French President Macron, who's been very vocal about France's backing of Ukraine up until now. I want to understand from you, what are your expectations from this meeting? Because it did seem that with all the European allies coming together and sort of drawing out red lines, that the meeting that happened between Marco Rubio and the Ukrainian delegation in Geneva, there was some sort of consensus that was reached over there. In light of all of this, what are your expectations from the upcoming meetings?
Well, this is now something serious. When it comes to Macron, to Keith Starmer, Friedrich Merz, the European leaders are serious. And they are, in fact, the real players here for solving the issue. They're imposing sanctions on Russia. They are supporting Ukraine with military and financial means. So, in fact, they are buying from United States the weapons that Ukraine needs. So, all of this is playing very well. Europe is very united, exactly with that incompetent US president. They need to be united and to take the issues in their own hands, and they show that commitment, that devotion. They would like to be the real players in this. So meetings such as Macron, Starmer, and Merz, and everybody else in Europe are important to watch, because this is where most of the news will come from, not from Putin, not from Donald Trump.
Interestingly, as a quick follow-up to Macron in specific, he's also slated to visit Beijing. He's also likely to rake up this particular war. The fact that even though China does not openly back Russia through tacit means, through the export of dual-use items like fiber optic cables, like lithium-ion batteries, it does enable Russia to manufacture drones that are then used to strike deeper into Ukrainian territory. He's also likely to rake up the fact that China is the largest importer of Russian oil. To what extent do you think Macron taking this up with Xi Jinping could help the Ukrainian side?
Well, we don't know yet, but yes, such attempts are important. You're absolutely correct that China is playing kind of a double game. They are not supporting openly the Russian aggression to Ukraine, but they do all the business with Russia. As you said, they buy a lot of oil and gas, which fuels war in terms of money, because Russia needs to buy weapons and drones and soldiers, including from North Korea. So money is what fuels the war, and the export of Russian oil and gas brings that money. And obviously, there will be an attempt by Macron to talk to the Chinese and somehow to signal to him that more China is doing that game. There will be no chance for peace, because Putin can fight forever if he got the money to fight forever. And China and India and other buyers of Russian oil and gas provide that money to continue the war forever. And that's the message here. Stop buying Russian oil and gas and everything else, and Putin will surrender. Simple.
Indeed, sir, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some further updates as far as the war is concerned. We're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has in fact emphasized that strengthening air defense remains Kyiv's top priority following large-scale Russian missile and drone attacks on the country's energy infrastructure. Remember, there were nearly 600,000 people around the capital region who were left without power after the strikes yesterday. Zelensky, meanwhile, had confirmed that nearly 560 drones and 19 missiles were intercepted during the assault by Russia. Listen in.
Зараз ще тривають роботи після нічного удару російських ракет і дронів. Масштабний був удар. Енергетика – основна ціль. Тут Росія не змінює свою тактику і досі намагається завдати Україні саме такого болю перед зимою. Важливо, що ми протидіємо, важливо, що є збиття. 19 ракет вдалося збити, серед них балістика. Подавлено також і майже 560 безпілотників, серед яких близько 300 шахеди. На жаль, не все було збито і і працювати для більш сильної ППО – це пріоритет номер один. Готуємось до роботи на наступному тижні з нашими партнерами, в тому числі заради більш якісної нашої протиповітряної оборони. Дуже розраховуємо на сприяння партнерів.
Professor Popovsky is still with us on the broadcast. We just heard what President Zelensky has had to say. But interestingly, the statistics speak for themselves. The fact that in just one assault, there were over 560 drones, 19 missiles that were used by the Russians. In light of this sort of hybrid warfare that we're seeing, what really are the urgent needs of the Ukrainians? We did, in fact, just a while back discuss the fact that France will be supplying Rafales to Ukraine, but that's more of a long-term plan. What's required at the short term to counter these threats? Sir, I beg your pardon. Yes, you're muted at the moment. If we can just increase the volume. Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
These are the numbers. You are correct that daily Russia can use about 500, 600 drones and about 30, 40, 50 missiles. 90% of those are gunned down by the Ukrainian air defense system, but still about 10% of those hit the targets. And this is why we have those casualties, those injured people, and so on. So obviously, Ukraine needs to receive more air defense system, especially the Patriot system could be very effective. Europeans should speed up those deliveries and protect the biggest cities, and not only all the cities, plus also the energy infrastructure. Obviously, the strategy of the Russians is to hit energy infrastructure. Winter is coming, temperatures are low, it's getting colder, and they want to make the life of Ukrainians miserable. Russia doesn't do anything else. They cannot advance on the battlefield. They cannot capture Donbass as they try for 20 months, and they are nowhere even near to what they want to achieve in the battlefield. But they want to make the life of the Ukrainians miserable and somehow to reduce the motivation of the Ukrainians to surrender. This is not going to happen. Ukrainians are united. They support their president, and they want to survive. They want simply to defend their territories, their cities, their families, and they will continue to fight. But they need, you're right, they need, and that's what Zelensky also said, he appealed to the Europeans to provide more air defense systems as for those attacks not to produce such civilian damage.
All right, sir, with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis and insights with us on NewsX World today. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus